start from the beginning of Siman Tufton Beis again, because we read the Mechaber and I gave it a little bit of a hakdama, but we never got into the Mishnah Berurah.
If you want to do the camera, we can do a side view.
No, it's all right. We'll worry about it another week. We don't want to take time. So the Siman Tufton Beis, we're on Mem Hey Amud Aleph. Zman Hagalas Keilim, the proper time to do Hagala, to kasher your Keilim, Aboy Zayin Seifim, we have 7 Seifim. The Mechaber says, Yesh Li Zahir, you should take care, Lahagil Keilim Shah Chamishes, to do your Hagala before the 5th hour, before Chametz becomes Aser. Why? Kedei, now, the Mechaber is going to give us a whole list of potential problems that would come up if you did your Hagala after the Zman HaIser. So what are the problems here? So he says, First of all, if you do the Hagala before the Zman HaIser, you don't have to worry whether or not the keilim that you're kashering, are they b'nei yoman, whether used with hat chametz within the previous 24 hours or not. If you're going to do Hagala after the Zman HaIser, then you're going to have to make sure that the keilim that you're kashering are not b'nei yoman. And we'll see why in the Mishnah Berurah. But if you do it before the Zman HaIser, the Mechaber says you don't have to worry about it. You could kasher the keli even if it's a ben yomai of chametz. Says the Ramah, another thing, if you kasher before the Zman HaIser, then you don't have to make sure that the water in the pot that you're doing the kashering in, you don't have to worry that the shishim, that you have 60 keneged the blias that are going to come out from the keilim that you're kashering, so that the water should be mevatel the blias. If you're doing it before the Zman HaIser, you don't have to worry. But if you do it after the Zman HaIser, then you have to make sure that your pot is big enough that you have shishim in the water keneged the blias.
We went over it before. How come if you're kashering tons and tons of stuff, you never have to empty out the water?
So let's wait for the Mishnah Berurah. When we get into the Mishnah Berurah, let's discuss it. V'chein, similarly, im magil keilim sheb'liyasamu etes im keilim sheb'liyasamu meruba. Another potential problem. Let's say you're kashering small keilim together with big keilim. So you have a very, very big pot, like these people in Borough Park that have the Hagala stations before, very convenient, they have the Hagala stations before Pesach. So they have these massive vats that they're doing kashering in. So let's say you're kashering big pots together with small spoons and knives and forks. If you're going to do this before the Zman HaIser, says the Mechaber, there's no potential problem. But if you do it after the Zman HaIser, you're going to have a potential problem, and we'll see why. V'chein, similarly, there's another potential problem if you kasher after the Zman HaIser, and that is if you leave the keilim in the pot for too long. If you leave the keilim in the pot, eventually what's going to happen is all the blias are going to come out of the keilim, and then they're going to go into the water, and then they're going to go back into the keilim. After the Zman HaIser, that's a problem. Before the Zman HaIser, that's not a problem. The Mechaber continues. Now, if somebody is going to worry that he's kashering after the Zman HaIser, so he wants to make sure that he doesn't leave the keilim in the pot too long, so now he's going to be in a rush. Now he's going to throw the keilim in and yank the keilim out. Says the Mechaber, that's also a potential problem, because if you don't leave the keilim in long enough so that they can lose all their blias, that's also a potential problem. And also, by kashering before the Zman HaIser, then we don't have to worry, what if the water stops boiling? Now, what the Mechaber means over here is, certainly you're going to put the keilim that you want to kasher into the pot while the water is boiling. What the Mechaber is saying is, if you kasher before the Zman HaIser, then you don't have to worry about what happens if during the Hagala process the water stops boiling for a moment. But if you kasher after the Zman HaIser, the Mechaber says, that's a potential problem. If the water stops boiling in the middle of the kashering process, and the Mishnah Berurah is going to explain why. Now, what's interesting over here is that we'll see the Ramah over here is going to take issue with the Mechaber, but everybody says, all the Mefarshim say that the Ramah had an incorrect understanding of the Mechaber. The Ramah felt that what the Mechaber meant was that somehow if you kasher before the Zman HaIser, you don't need the water to be boiling. but after the Zman Isser you do. And therefore the Ramah jumps right away, and the Ramah says, what? Hagah, ach rabim cholkim, many disagree with this Mechaber. Svir luhudein, Hagah l'mayelas klum, emen amayim roischem. Hagah doesn't do anything if the water is not boiling. But like the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, the Mefarshim and the Achrayim all say that the Ramah misunderstood what the Mechaber meant over here. The Mechaber also agrees that in order to accomplish Hagah, the water has to be boiling. And certainly you're going to put the keilim in while the water is boiling. Question is, when you throw keilim in, that takes heat away from the water, and the water stops boiling momentarily. And the Mechaber is saying that before the Zman Isser, that time period when the water stops boiling is not a problem, but after the Zman Isser, it could create a problem. Now let's see the Mishnah Berurah, who will give us the background and the understanding into all of this.
If it wasn't Pesach time, I forget about before perhaps in a normal year, you would never even think that way. If you're doing Hagala,
Right.
Right?
Why would you ever think that the water doesn't have to be boiling? Yeah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Aleph, Yesh li Zoher, Tam Lozeh. What's going on here? What's the background to all of this? What's the reasoning here? Dehine Inyan Hagala. What is the whole concept of Hagala? Hu deresichas hamayim, the boiling of the water, moitzias habalua bakli. It pulls out whatever is nivla, whatever tam is absorbed into the keilim, are pulled out by the boiling water. Aval, however, yesh lachush, you have to worry, da'acher shemoitzias habalua, after the keli gives out whatever it had absorbed in its walls, yachzar v'yibola bakli mashapolta. Now it's going to be re-bailea. Right? When you have a keli in hot, it's bailea. So very nice. This keli has a balua in it, tam chametz, and the boiling water is going to pull out those blias. So where did the blias go? They go into the water, and now why don't they go back into the keli? And because of this issue, Kasra Paiskim, the Paiskim say, De'ein lahagil rak kli she'ena ben yoimoy. That normally, when we do a Hagala to kasher a keli, we only do Hagala when the keli is an Eina ben Yoimoy. Then, afim yivla masha polat, even if it will be bailea, the tam that it gave out, harei lefgamhu. So now it's being bailea, something that's nice and tam lefgam. And when we're bailea something that's nice and tam lefgam, so now we're not worried. So we had problematic blias inside a keli. We wanted to get rid of those blias, so we threw it into a pot to make a gala. We got the blias out. Now you're afraid it's going to be bailea again? If it's bailea initially tam, that's nice and tam lefgam, that's not a problem. So we wait until the keli is not a ben yoimai. Or another thing you could do is sheyia b'mayim shishim levatalos plitas iser. Or you make sure when you do hagala that you have shishim in the water connected the blias that are going to come out. So if you're kashering a fork in a big pot, you definitely have shishim in the mayim connected the blias that are in the fork. So it's no problem. The blias come out of the fork, and now they're bottled in the mayim, and now you don't have to worry about it being bailea the iser again. The blias, the tam is bottled. And now that you understand the logic here of how Hagala works and what we traditionally do with Hagala, now, based on this understanding, the Mechaber is saying, if you're doing Hagala for Chametz before the 5th hour, so right now it's heter. You're not dealing with Isser. Now, you're not going to have to deal with any of these issues. Why? Because before the 5th hour, Tam Chametz is heter. So now, what are you worried about? Let's analyze this. You're going to take a fork, you're going to throw it into a pot. The Chametz Tigablias are going to come out of the fork. Now, you're using a very small pot to do this Hagala. So you don't have shishim in the mayim, keneged the fork. Okay, so what's going to happen? So the blias are going to come out of the fork, they're going to go into the water, and now you're worried that they're going to go back into the fork. Well, that's not bar not, it's nice and tam bar nice and tam, because it's tam that goes from the fork into the water, and then from the water back into the fork. So it's 2 generations. So it's not bar not, the hetera. Chametz is mutter before the 5th hour. Not bar not. The not is an abbreviation, nice and tam. So it's not bar not, the hetera. It's 2nd generation nice and tam of heter. So not Barnat Terah, we're not worried about. So on all of these cases, the whole tam of chametz that we have over here is heter. The fork is balua with tam chametz of heter. When these blias come out of the fork and they go into the water, it's tam of heter. And now when it goes back into the fork, it's also heter. So it's not barnat terah. Not barnat terah, we're not worried. So, right away, this explains the first line of the Mechaber here. The first case that the Mechaber gave was, if you do the Hagala before the 5th hour, you don't have to worry whether or not the Keli is a Ben Yoimai or not. Because normally, we only kasher a Keli that's not a Ben Yoimai, so that when it's by Leah, the tam that it gave out, it's nice and tam Gam. But over here, we don't care if it's nice and tam Gam. Even if it's nice and tam Shvach, it's still not barnat tehetera. Not barnat tehetera, we're not going to aser. Also, we don't have to worry, like the Ramah said, whether you have shishim in the water to be mavatal the tam. You don't have to be mavatal the tam. Let the tam stay there. The tam will come out of the fork, it'll go into the water. We don't need it to be bottle. It's going to go back into the fork. We don't care if it goes back into the fork. It's not barnat tehetera. So we don't have to be mavatal it. So you don't need shishim in the mayim.
Why are you allowed to use a chametz stick of pot, which is...
Oh, so that's going to be on the next page. On the next page, we're going to say the same thing. Ultimately, we're really going to say the same thing. We're going to say that you can use a chametz stick of pot. Because why not? You're using a chametz stick of pot. Fine. So you're using a chametz stick of pot that has chametz stick of blias in it. Right? So now the chametz stick of blias, when you boil the water, the chametz stick of blias are going to go into the water. And now what are you afraid of? That they're going to go from the water into the keli? Not barnat terah. Again, it's second generation Dyson Tam. It's Dyson Tam from the pot into the water, from the water into the fork.
But you didn't do Hagala on the pot. So the
right.
question is, if you took a fleshik pot, and you...
No. Now you're talking about Isser. Now you're worried about fleshiks, and now you're talking about Isser. You're not talking about chametz anymore. Chametz.
I think he's asking a good question. If you're taking a pot, forget whether it's flesh or not, the pot you're taking, what? It's a non-denominational pot? It's a pot that was used for something.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying...
So what difference does it make if it's a fleshing pot or if it's a different pot? Doesn't matter.
So the truth is that if you're doing, let's say, fleshiks, you're not dealing with Isser. You're not dealing with Isser, you're dealing with fleshiks. So again, what would the worry be? Let's say you take a fleshik, a pot.
No, I'm saying any pot. He gave the example of fleshik. So,
right.
And he said that fleshik is a different problem. When we're saying that you're putting the utensils into a pot, my understanding was any pot.
Any pot.
Flesh is a milk. It doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't matter.
So, what was the issue of the early comment?
No. So my comment to him was misplaced. My comment to him, if you're talking about kashering because you have isser, in other words, let's say you want to kasher a fork that had blias of basar v'chalav in it. Now you're dealing with a different issue. That's why I reacted when he said fleshiks. Yeah.
But I want to suggest that's true. But I want to suggest something else. In order to properly do Hagala on a pot, you have to dip a pot within a pot so that the whole pot is going to be
right.
But let's say you fill the pot almost to the top, right? So now you boil water in that pot and you pour it out. So I want to say that all the blias from that pot, except for that small little drop on the top, is out. So now, therefore, you can technically take the fleshik pot and put milchiks in it because you're not going to have, you'll have batal b'shishim because you already boiled it out. But it doesn't work like that.
I'm not.
Because the eyes have no overflow.
In other words, you can't. The blias. If you.
What are you trying to accomplish?
If you have something tray, you can cook you can cook a parva thing in there for 1,000,000 years. You're not going to change that pot into a kosher pot.
No, you have to kasher the pot
until you kasher the pot.
Right.
So the blias somehow magically doesn't come out, whereas over here somehow it magically comes out and doesn't cause a problem.
No, if you want to kasher the pot, you have to agal on the pot. To do agal on the pot, you've got to put the pot into a bigger pot.
Right.
And then the blias will come out.
But you can cook, let's say you can cook, and it doesn't go directly to the pot. For 1,000,000 years, you can cook something parv, non-denominational, non-whatever, kosher, in a tray of a pot, but that will never become kosher until you do Hagala. Which sort of doesn't make sense, because you would think eventually all of the blias would come out just by nature.
Okay, you're asking Stamazah, you're asking how come when you cook in a pot, why don't you eventually lose the blias?
Yeah.
That's what you're asking. Yeah, so I mean...
I mean, it's certainly going to take shishim out, that's for sure. After a certain period of time, it has to disappear.
I mean, the problem. You see, you're trying to create a situation where you're not actually kashering the pot. You're cooking in the pot, but you're not kashering the pot.
Yeah.
So you're leaving parts of the pot where you're not affecting hechsher on it,
right,
because you're not getting that into the water.
Right. But it's such a small portion of it.
Yeah, I hear.
Right.
That's a Yeridei issue. Okay, so ice cut and bays keilim shal chamishis. So you should do your kashering before the 5th hour, the metchilas chamishis, because once you hit the beginning of the 5th hour, kevin the nesar al kol panim derabanan. Now chametz is for sure an issa derabanan. Sulay mikri neisid tarma neisid tam de'etera. Once you hit the 5th hour, we're not going to call it not bar not de'etera anymore because it's an issa derabanan. Okay. Now, another potential issue that the Mechaber said over here was, what if you're doing Hagal on big keilim and small keilim? So you're kashering spoons and forks, and you're also kashering bigger plates and bowls. So the Mechaber said, if you do your kashering before the 5th hour, you don't have a problem. If you do it after the 5th hour, you do. What does this mean? Says the Mishnah Berurah Cut and Gimel, Shebeliyasan muetes. Let's say you're kashering keilim that contains smaller amounts of bliyos. Kegain, for instance, kapos, spoons, v'kaisais, small cups, im ka'arais, together with plates, ukederais, and pots. So now you're kashering small keilim that have small amounts of blias, together with big keilim that have large amounts of blias. The yesh lachush, over here you would have a potential worry. The achar sheyigmaru lahaflit es bliasan hamu'ata, when the small keilim finish giving out their small amounts of blias. So now in the vernacular of Yeridea, the keilim are not torrid, they're not busy giving out their blias. They already finished giving out their blias. So now yachzeru v'yivlu, now they will reabsorb miplitas keilim ha'acherim shebliyasan meruba. You have plates and cups in here that are giving out chametz blias, and now you have forks that are not giving out blias anymore. They already finished giving out their blias, and now they're going to reabsorb. So after the Zman of Isser, that's a potential problem because you're dealing with Tam of Isser. But before the 5th hour, to Kulai Heter, when everything is Tam of Heter, because chametz is Heter, Ein Lachash Afilu Im Yivlu. You don't even have to worry if the Keilim are Bailea, other Tam. They have a nice and Tam de'etera. Again, it's not Barnat de'etera, so it's not a problem. Now, I'm just thinking in my mind, I don't know why this didn't bother me before. Maybe somebody could tell me, maybe I'm missing the boat. I'm not sure why this is in any way a bigger chiddush than what we said before. Not so much that it's not a bigger chiddush. It's what are the two things that we said so far? We said one thing. We said if you put, let's say you're only kashering a fork, right? So you drop the fork into the boiling water. If you do it after the Zman Isser, there's a potential problem. What's the problem? Oh, I understand why. Okay. This is what was bothering me. He said a case, if you drop the fork into the water, after the Zman Isser, we have to worry that once the fork stops being pilot, right, it stops giving out its tam, it's going to reabsorb the tam that it gave out, right? So after the 5th hour, that's a concern because it's tam of Isser. Before the 5th hour, it's not a concern because it's tam of Heter. Now we have another case. The other case is I'm kashering a fork and a plate. So after the Zman Isser, we have a potential problem. Why? Because the plate is going to continue being pilot after the fork stopped being pilot. So when the fork stops being pilot, it'll be bailea the tam from the plate. Yeah, but even if you take the plate out of the story, so what? The fork it's the same problem. If the fork finished being pilot, so it will be rebailea its own tam. What does the plate add? Why does the plate create a bigger problem than the fork itself? You understand what I'm saying? And
why should you be able to do it after the 5th hour if we don't hold up to the shishim after the 5th hour of Shabbat?
Why what?
Why should you be allowed to try to kasher things after the 5th hour? Are we still we're not holding batal b'shishim anymore?
Chametz is only also b'mashu by nightfall.
By nightfall.
So
we're still holding batal b'shishim.
Yeah, you still have batal b'shishim.
But before that, we're not worrying about batal b'shishim.
Before that, it's tam heter. We're not worrying about it at all.
So we're not worrying about it.
Right, it's not parnat heter. We're not worrying about it at all.
It's going to be very difficult when you have larger keilim. Perhaps it's not going to be batal b'shishim anymore.
I'm saying, but we don't need batal b'shishim here.
Even after the 5th hour?
Saying no, but we're talking now before the 5th hour. In other words, he's saying he's delineating problems that are problems after the 5th hour, but they're not problems before the 5th hour. So my only issue, but the only thing that's bothering me over here is he gave me one case. Before the 5th hour, if you drop in the fork, you don't have to worry that when the fork stops being pilot, it will start to be baleya. Now, what's it going to be baleya? It's going to be baleya the tam that came out of it, right? It had tam chametz. Its tam chametz went into the water. Now it could be re-baleya. Before the 5th hour, that's not a problem. Because even if it happens, it's not parnat heter. After the 5th hour, it's a problem. Okay, next case. You kasher a fork together with a plate. After the 5th hour, you have to worry that the fork is going to stop being pilot, and it's going to be baleya the tam from the plate. Before the 5th hour, you don't have to worry about that. Now my question is, after the 5th hour, what do I care if there's a plate there or not? When the fork finishes being pilot, it's going to be baleya its own tam. Right? Yeah. Whether there's a plate in the water or not. What is the plate adding to this case?
We have no time when it comes to those things. There's no time. It's not like it takes 60 seconds or it takes a minute and a half.
So I'm saying, so maybe
we're dealing with something that we don't.
Right. So maybe the point is that if you would be doing the fork itself, you would have less of a problem because you'd throw the fork in and you'd pull the fork out. And we would say that we're not going to be chayshish that it was re-baleya the tam because I did it very fast. But if there's a plate in there, even if you did it very fast, maybe it's baleya from the plate.
Very fast, maybe it's all coming.
Right.
How come nobody mentioned the time? I don't like that because first of all, the Machaber didn't mention the time, did he?
No, he's not going to say a time.
Is he in there?
No, it's said, right?
No, that's the other. I'm just a little puzzled. Why is this a bigger problem? Why does the plate make a bigger problem than the fork itself? Okay, I'm not sure. I have to think on that. I'm not sure. Okay. Ice cotton dalid. V'cheinim mashe. Another potential problem that the Mechaber put out is this timing issue.
Is this an issue with multiple items that he's making a differentiation as opposed to single items?
Yeah, no, it is. You're doing bigger items together with smaller items.
So if it's not a batal b'shishim problem, so then why should it be a problem? That's what I don't understand.
If it's not a what?
If it's a batal b'shishim problem, then I understand. If it's a not batal b'shishim problem, then it doesn't make sense why it should be a problem at all.
Well, I'm not following you.
What does it matter whether you have a zillion things in the pot? No, you have a bunch of plates. Yeah, the whole pot is filled up with stuff. What do you care?
No, again, the problem is because you have bigger things and smaller things.
Right.
So when you have bigger items and smaller items, they give out, it is a timing issue. They give out their blias at different rates. So the small keilim is going to finish giving out its blias before the big keilim does. And now it's sitting in the water together with the big keilim, so it's going to be baleya the tam that's coming out of the big keilim.
So first of all, it doesn't mention anything about time. That's first of all.
About what?
About time.
No, he does. That's what he says right here. The yesh lachush the achar sheyigmaru lahaflet es blias anamuata. After the small keilim finishes giving out its blias, yachzeru v'yivlu miplitas keilim acherim sheblias and maruba. It's now going to be baleya the tam that's coming out from the bigger keilim.
How do we deal with all these Hagala kitchens that they set up? I don't understand this now.
No, because again, that's all before the. It's all before the 5th hour.
Before the 5th hour, so that's
Right.
not an issue. Okay,
So it's all not that
The
terror.
question is, after the 5th hour is when they're talking about that there's a problem when you're doing with
Right. After the 5th hour, you have a problem. But again, I still don't understand. After the 5th hour, you have a problem.
It's a chumrah. That's what it seems like.
After the 5th hour, you have a problem, even if you're just kashering 1 spoon.
Right.
If you leave it in, but the only thing I could think is that after the 5th hour, the way you could solve the problem with the single keli is that you drop it in and you take it out. But the problem is exacerbated when you have bigger keilim in the pot too, because now there's no way you're going to get the timing right. Because you have to worry about the timing. You have 17 different timings. You have the timing for the plate, the timing for the pot, the timing for the spoon, the timing.
Who's to say also that an object cannot be giving out its blias and at the same time taking it?
No, that's what Rishonim say. That's what Rishonim say. That's a fact. Halakhically, it's a fact.
But how do you time that?
We can't time it. It's a very big problem. We can't time it.
You can easily say it's coming out from here and it's going back in from the other.
No, but that's a halachic fact that it says in halacha that when a keli is torrid being pilot, it can't be balea. So what do you do? So this is why when we kasher from any isser, if you have a keli that has tam of isser, we're not going to let you kasher it unless it's not a ben yoimai. So if it's not a ben yoimai, you're talking about tam pogum. So we're not worried about the re balea because it's being balea tam pogum.
What's the difference between before the 5th hour and after the 5th hour in this? So
whether chametz is heter or chametz is isser. Before the 5th hour, whatever tam we're dealing with is tam heter. Chametz is mutter before the 5th hour. So it's all tam heter. So once we're dealing with tam heter, we're on easy street. That's the whole point of here. This whole thing is that before the 5th hour, we're on easy street because we're dealing with tam heter. So any re-bailea that we're talking about is not barnat to hetera. Not barnat to hetera is not a problem. But once it's isser, we have all of these problems.
That's really,
But once it's isser, we have all of these problems.
That's what they're trying to tell you.
No, that is what they're telling
No,
you.
but I'm saying play. It's not play. It doesn't matter. It's the 6th hour. That's why I don't understand.
Right. I'm a little.
I'm not seeing a distinction.
The only thing that I'm seeing is that what the mechaber is doing is the mechaber is throwing at you all of the potential problems. All of these are they're all potential problems. It's not necessarily that one potential problem is bigger than the next one, or that one potential problem necessarily exacerbates the other one. They're just all potential problems.
But once it's Tam Isser, we're still not worried about Batal B'Shishim, right?
No. Once it's Tam Isser,
right.
So then we're going to talk later. What happens if you have to kasher after the 5th hour?
Yeah.
What do we do then? So then you got to make sure that there's shishim in the water, because then you have to make sure that when the tam chametz comes out of whatever you're kashering, it's bottle.
Right.
Otherwise, you can have a problem.
So then that seems to be the problem.
What do you mean that seems to be the problem? After the 5th hour, you need shishim,
Right.
but before the 5th hour, you don't,
Right.
because it's tam heter. Right?
So that's it. So what is that? Answers
No, that doesn't answer my problem. My problem just is, the Mechaber is giving me this whole list of potential problems, and I don't see why this question of kashering big keilim together with small keilim is any more of a problem than kashering one keli, I don't care what size it is, all by itself. The problem is the same problem. The problem is that you're afraid that when the keli finishes giving out its blias, it's going to reabsorb its blias. Right? So what do I care if the potential problem is that a fork is going to be re-bailea its own blias? Or my problem is that the fork is going to be re-bailea the blias that are coming out of a plate. Doesn't matter. The bottom line is the problem is that there are chametz stick of blias in the water. And when a keli finishes being pilot, it could be bailea. And says the Mechaber, that's not a problem before the 5th hour, because before the 5th hour, it's not barnat te'etera. It is a problem after the 5th hour, because then it's not barnat te'isura. But I don't care if you're kashering one fork alone, or you're kashering a fork together with a serving tray. What's the difference?
It doesn't say not the Isura, but only Batal B'Shishim.
Well, that we're going to say later, that when you're doing it after the 5th hour, you have to make sure that you have bittul b'shishim.
That's what answers the question. Yeah, once it's Batal B'Shishim.
No, you're right. If you would be doing this kashering if you would be doing this koshering before the 5th hour.
I'm talking about after the 5th.
After the 5th hour, if you have bittul b'shishim, you're okay.
Even with a fork and a big plate.
Even with a fork and a big plate, as long as you have shishim kineged everything.
Yeah.
You're gonna even with a fork, yeah, because as soon as the blias come out, they're gonna be bottled. But you have to make sure that you have shishim kineged everything that you're koshering.
In the 5th hour is not a problem.
Before the 5th hour, it's not an issue. Now, happens to be that by the end of the day, by the time we're finished over here, we see the Ramah and the Mishnah Berurah and everything else, we're going to find out that we don't kasher anything even before the 5th hour, unless it's an Eina Ben Yoimai, and I think we're makbid to have shishim kineged it also. But all right, let's go a little bit weiter. What?
I don't know how you have that if it's a common stick pot to begin with.
What, shishim?
Yeah.
These places in Borough Park, they have shishim. These massive vats. Yeah, these massive vats that they put in.
The pot itself was chametz to begin with.
Which pot? The vat that they're using?
Yeah.
No, then you would have a problem. Although I have to see what we're knowing. But one of the things that the Mechaber is going to say tomorrow is that another thing you don't have to worry about if you're koshering before the 5th hour is that you don't have to do Hagala on the pot that you're using for Hagala before the 5th hour. After the 5th hour, you do.
All this is, you see that there weren't such chumras like we put on ourselves today. A lot of
we have tremendous chumras. Yeah, we have tremendous chumras. We have tremendous chumras.
What our mothers used to do.
Yeah, we're machmer.
All the time. That's why we do
What?
Because we don't know, so it's easy to think.
Yes, I always say over the story that happened with my sister-in-law, Rabbi Ruben's daughter, when she was in high school, and the teacher was teaching basic halachas of kashrus, and the teacher made the following statement. She said, "I would never eat in a house that has one sink." So she said, my sister-in-law said, I guess you wouldn't eat in my grandfather's house. So he said, what do you mean? She said, my grandfather only has one sink. I guess you wouldn't eat in my grandfather's house. So Rabbi Ruben always said that it's no kunst to be nizar when we pile on chumras upon chumras. The kunst is to be nizar, and that's why he always said, if you look at the way we bake matzahs and what they did in the Beis HaMikdash, the lechem hapanim, we just had this week's parsha, lechem hapanim couldn't be chametz. And they had to knead it with warm water. We do everything, not only cold water, but it has to be maim shalanu. And the lechem hapanim was a tefach thick. And our matzahs we make thin. So we have chumras on top of chumras on top of chumras on top of chumras, which is why I think I said this over. That I did. That time that Reb David told me that it's not going to become chametz less than a sheer mil. I think he's putting in perspective when you come into the matzah bakery and you pitch a fit because a tegela is sitting on the table for a little bit, realizing that you're pitching a fit on something that's chumras on top of 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 chumras. You know what I mean? So put it in perspective. It's not, we want to try that matzah shouldn't sit, and we want to try that tegela shouldn't, but at the same time we're mass producing matzah. And we're using chumras on top of chumras on top of chumras on top of chumras on top of chumras. So you really worried there's chametz there?
People don't know the halachas. That's the problem.
Somebody came to Ruben this morning. He's going to bake matzah today. So he's now they have a small chabura. I bake 2,500 pounds. He's baking 250 pounds. There's a lot of things you can do when you're baking 250 pounds that you can't do when you're baking 2,500 pounds. So their makbid, they don't let any of the tegelach sit on the table. If the lady makes a tegel and she and nobody needs it yet, they hand it to somebody who works it, who's ma'abed it, until mamish somebody needs it. I can't do that. My production is it's too much mass production. I would have to have 10 people. So a tegel will sit on the table. Sometimes for 20 seconds, sometimes for 30 seconds, until somebody takes it. I do have extra people by the table, but even with the extra people by the table, sometimes it'll sit. So this guy who makes sure that the matzah is always being handled comes to a room with a shaila. One of the Bnei Chabura came over to him and said, he's very not happy. He's very concerned. Why? Because he was speaking to somebody else who told him that the tegel, it depends what you do with it. If you want to stop it from being machmitz, you have to work it. If, on the other hand, you don't work it, you're just holding it and playing with it, adarabba, it'll become a chametz faster because of the warmth of your hands. So he came to Reuven and they asked Reuven, either way, it's fine. If it's sitting on the table, it's okay. If you take it and you want to be makmer, yeah, we have a lot of, but it's asus yagla Torah. That's what it is. Okay, let's just do ice cut and dalit over here. Otherwise, we're going to fall even further behind. V'chein imashe. The other potential problem that the Mechaber pointed out over here is, what if you leave a keli in the pot when you're kashering it too long, or you don't leave it in there long enough? Ritzayne loyma. The magel kli iser lahakshiroi. Let's say you have a keli that is blias of iser. You have a keli that is basa b'chalav balua in it. Oy kli chametz lachas manisuroi. Or you're trying to kasher a chametz sticky keli after the 5th hour. So again, you're talking about tam iser. Sarach ledaktek. Now you have to be careful. Shalayasha isamahar me'mamayim. That you don't leave the keli for a long time in the water. Mishum deyesh lachush, because you have to worry. Sha'acha gamar plitasa yachsev v'yivla. Again, it's going to finish giving out its blias, and it's going to be finished being pilot, and it's going to be balea again. The gam shaloi lahasha yisai some klal elalahitzi tekif gam kenein enachin. But what are you going to do? You can't just throw the keli in and yank it out. That also is no good. Tzarich lishais ma'at achi yifleit es bliasai. Because you have to leave the keli in the water a little bit so that it should finish giving out all of its blias. V'hu kasher l'tzamtzem. And it's impossible to be mitzamtzem. We don't know exactly what that time is. But if you're doing the hagala before the zman iser, ain't tzarich l'tzamtzem. You don't got to worry about it. You could leave it in the water. If you do the hagala after the zman iser, or if we're not dealing with chametz, we're dealing with iser like basa v'chalav. That's why otherwise there's no way you're not going to be able to be mitzamtzim the time. So what you got to do is you got to make sure that the keli that you're kashering is an einim ben yoimai. Or you have to have shishim in the mayim and connected the blias. So then you also don't have the problem of leaving it in there too long. So again, the Mechaber is just pointing out, if you do your kashering before the zman iser, you don't have any of these problems. But if you do it after the zman iser, you have all of these problems.